Are you tired of advertisements? You can listen to this episode and more ad-free for only $1 a month by supporting the show on Patreon. Visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and hit the Patreon tab for more details. Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us. I'm your guide, Derek Hayes. Welcome back, folks, to another terrifying installment. And boy, do I have one lined up for you here tonight. A collection of calls that insist that mysteries can come in small shapes and sizes. Over the years, I've received a number of calls from you listeners, specifically about tonight's topic. Pint-sized people in the woods. People of the forest folk, wee folk, elves, trolls, fairies, gnomes, and duende. They go by many names, but each of those stories that we've received seem to be describing the exact same thing. A 6-inch to 2-foot tall, human-like entity, complete with clothing, shoes, and tools. And tonight's episode is chock full of stories about these little entities. Now, to get us started, we go way back to Season 5, Episode 5. Please welcome Floyd to tonight's program.
Hi, my name is Floyd. I live in the Southern Appalachians. It's where all my mother's people are from. My grandmother was one half Cherokee, and I don't know if you're familiar with this legend of the little people that live in these mountains, but I had an occurrence when I was a child that has stayed with me since that point as honest to God truth, real experience that I can't explain. I was raised in Savannah, Georgia. I live here in the mountains now, but we were visiting the mountains then when I was a little boy, and that was back in the day when kids took a nap during the day. And my grandmother was lying on her side facing me in the bed, and the bed was up against the wall. She was closest to the wall, and I was, as little boys, 5-year-old boys will do, I was popping up and lying back and popping up and lying back, and just wiggling around, not wanting to take a nap because I was in the mountains. I wanted to play. Well, I popped up one time, the last time, and so thank God to this day, I remember it just as vividly as I can see these mountains out of my window right now. A little fist, about the size of a fist that you would imagine on an elf or a little person or a fairy. But a little fist came up from the crack between the wall and the bed, knocked 3 times on the wall, and went back down. My grandmother sat up and looked and just put it off as me bouncing on the bed. It wasn't me bouncing on the bed. I remember this. It wasn't a dream. I know it wasn't a dream because I wouldn't go back to sleep. I wouldn't get back in that bed. And you can research, you can Google the little people of the mountains and the Cherokee legends. But I do a lot of hiking and camping up in these woods. I live in a cabin way up in the mountains. And I have yet to come across a little person hiking in these mountains. But I've been meaning to call about this since I found you. You have a great show, wonderful show. I listen to it every day in the morning. And thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Floyd. Now folks, this is a best of episode, so you're going to hear very little from me and more from callers like TJ from season 15, episode 13, in the state of Alabama.
Hi Derek, this is TJ from Salem, Alabama again. This is actually a secondhand experience. This happened to my wife. She won't call and leave the message, so I'm doing it for her. She's 28 now, and this happened when she was 16, so about 12 years ago. Her and her best friend would take their car and drive through a field behind her parents' house. It's pretty much like a big cow pasture, but right in the middle of it, a creek comes out of the ground, and there's a pretty thick forest around where the creek comes out. They drove the car, parked on the opposite side of the creek where no one could see them from the road or anything, and smoking cigarettes, doing what teenagers do. And they said that they started hearing this noise, like a lug noise, kind of like, water in a water cooler kind of thing. It kept getting louder and louder, and they couldn't figure out where the noise was coming from. Well, they leaned the seats back in their car so they couldn't see anything anymore, but nothing could see them in the car either. And the noise just kept getting louder and louder. Well, finally they freaked out enough to decide to get out of the field and set the seats up. And as soon as my wife turned the headlights on, she said there was this little man, about 2, maybe 3 feet tall, just a little man dressed in what she describes as basically nature clothing, like, leaves and skins and stuff that he would have found. And the headlights caught him perfectly, apparently. And he started to run around the trees a little bit, but then dove into the trees where the creek was. She said that she doesn't think that the sound was coming from the little man, but that whatever was making the sound might have scared him too. And this is the only story I've ever heard, from someone personally that has had an experience with a little man like that. So I thought I'd call and share the story. Love the podcast. Talk to you later.
A big thanks to TJ for calling in. Now, folks, if you have a story you would like to share here on the program, give our hotline a call at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or you can email your story to us at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. Now up next, we head to nearby Mississippi, where we hear from Anonymous from season 15, episode 25.
Oh, hey, Derek. I won't stay anonymous for this, but I live over in Lauderdale County, Mississippi. I was just on my route, and it's like 12:30, and I was pulling out of the house that I was at. I thought it was like one of them garden home things sitting there in front of the house, and then I was backing up, kind of paying attention, looking around, and I cut my eyes back around, and I see the thing run. It took off running through the woods. It was like a little jockey, though. I'm not really sure what it was. I don't remember seeing. I go to this house once a week doing a route. Not really sure what it was. It's just weird. I don't know.
Thank you, caller, for sharing the entry. Now, folks, I have plenty more little people stories right after these quick messages.
Let me ask you something, Christian. What do you think?
We've officially entered cozy season, and Bombas has the socks, slippers, and tees to make you feel all warm inside. Plus, I know you're already thinking about holiday shopping, and Bombas make great gifts. They have Sherpa-lined Sunday slippers for your parents and grandparents, all-purpose performance socks for the sporty people in your life, and they even have baby Bombas with gripper bottoms for the little ones on your holiday list. By the way, Bombas is really stepping up their slipper and slide game this season. They have new shapes and styles, some fluffy, some suede. There's truly something for everyone. Best of all, for every item you buy, Bombas donates one to someone facing homelessness, which makes me feel great about my choice to shop at Bombas. For me, the quality of Bombas really stands out from the rest. It makes sense that they offer a happiness guarantee, which means if you're not 100% into what you've got, they'll make it right. No risk, all reward. head on over to bombas.com/MAU and use code MAU for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/MAU and use code MAU at checkout. bombas.com/MAU and use code MAU.
This report is sponsored by the
Solution for reducing your financial stress.
Now this next entry comes to us from Canada. Please welcome Alex to the program.
Hi, my name is Alexander, and I'm from Windsor, Ontario. So for a very long time, I have this memory of me being a kid in some kind of crib or like young kids kind of like a bedroom situation. And it was like Christmas Eve, and I remember lying down ready to go to sleep, and there was this weird elf figure that appeared on my bed and was not like being aggressive or anything, but was being like pretty intimidating or like weirdly like trying to like mess with me. I remember it being so vivid and so real. It wasn't like a dream situation, because I can still like make sure that I know what dreams are like. And it wasn't a dream situation. Anyway, so that must have been when I was like 6 or 7 years old. Cut to now I'm 30 years old. I'm like on this website called Omegle, where you just like connect with random people throughout the world just for fun to talk to them and stuff. And I met this woman, and for some reason we started talking about supernatural experiences, and I asked her if she had any supernatural experiences that ever happened, and she said no. She asked me, obviously, afterwards, and I said, yeah, actually I do. I was a really young kid, and I had this weird elfish creature, very vivid in my memory, kind of like bugging me when I was a kid. And she was like, oh yeah, that's something called a duende. Had no stop in her step while saying that. And she was from the Philippines, and she was like, yeah, it's a duende. They sometimes mess with kids. If you go on Wikipedia and look up the duende, the second picture on the Wikipedia account is exactly what I saw. There's no reason for me at that age that I saw this thing for me to know what that thing looked like. Like if it was like something that was put in my mind beforehand, I was flabbergasted. It was a crazy experience. Like I said, it was like not a dream. I was completely awake. And then I want to say 25 years later, actually, because I must have been around 6 or 7. So about 25 years later, this person that I don't know that I just met on a website knew exactly what I was talking about. This weird elfish creature was messing with me, and I still remember it to this day very vividly. Anyway, love you, Derek. Your podcast is amazing, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Alex. That one from one of our Christmas episodes, I believe. Now next up, we head down to the desert state of Arizona. Please welcome Michelle from Season 9, Episode 14.
Hey Derek, it's Michelle calling from Arizona. So the story, I heard about it on another podcast I was listening to. It's called Lore, and this specific one is Episode 5, if people want to check it out. They're called the Huldafolk, or the Hidden People, and they reside in Iceland. And pretty much they're invisible elves that look and act like humans. And they're said to be Eve's children that she had hid from God. So I think there's a quote in the Bible or something that says, what man hides from God, God hides from man. So I think that's probably why they're invisible, because God had hid them from Eve. But that's kind of where they come from and why they're invisible. But in the late 1930s, there was a construction plan in Iceland to build a road through the hill that they were known to head guard or live or reside or whatever you want to call it. And then the construction actually started in the late 1940s. And when it did, equipment started breaking. and went missing and got thrown away. There's all sorts of kind of weird stuff happened to the equipment. So they decided to just build around the hill instead of try and drill through it and break it down. They came back in 1980 to try and break back through the hill and build the road straight. And again, as soon as they started construction, all the equipment broke to the point where people just stopped working on it. They didn't want their tools to go missing or anything to happen to them. So that road still goes around the hill, which I think they call it like an elf hole. If you just kind of look up Huldufolk, it's Huldufolk. The first thing that comes up is the picture of that hill, and to me it looks like a hobbit house. It's underground, but you can kind of see it from the side. There's a door. So I just thought it was really cool. Thank you. Bye.
We appreciate the call, Michelle. Now, moving right along. This next entry might be brand new to many of you, because it originally played on Monsters Among Us Beyond, episode 51. So please enjoy this entry from James, out of the state of Texas.
Hey, Derek. James from Texas, just giving you a call. I was just listening to the latest episode. I believe it's season 10, episode 3, where you're talking about the little people. Interestingly enough, I actually had a similar instance that happened to me whenever I was very young. I was in a living room, just kind of by myself. I think I was sitting on a couch, just kind of playing by myself. I think I had some G.I. Joe men or, some sort of figurine. Anyway, as I sat there, all of a sudden I heard, giggling. But it wasn't just your normal giggle. I mean, it wasn't like a evil giggle or like a little kid giggle. It was literally like a little person giggle, like you would think leprechauns or, trolls or, any of those, or fairies or whatever. It was one of those kind of giggles, and there was several of them, so it was like a group of them, and they all had different tones, so none of them sounded alike. Anyway, I started hearing this little giggle, and, I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. That they were just laughing, and I always kind of had that sense or connection to whatever, paranormal or whatever you want to call it. And I'm also, I have very Irish heritage, so, I think I'm 70% or 72% Celtic Irish. So anyway, we always, my family talked about leprechauns, and I'm redheaded, so I always got teased, of course, as being, part of a leprechaun family when I was little. So anyway, I was always really in tune to those type of scenarios. But anyway, this giggle, like I said, I was sitting there and I heard it, and I stopped playing and I was listening, and then it seemed like it would move, like it moved behind me, like I was on the picture of the couch, sitting the back of the couch is against the wall. I heard giggling, and it kind of went behind the couch and out, and then it kind of went over on the other side of the room, and it was just this similar giggle, like they would stop and then giggle over here, then stop and giggle over here, and it was just like they were playing, and it wasn't threatening, it wasn't bad, it wasn't anything negative by any means. It was just, it sounded like a little group of mini whateevers playing and having a good time and laughing and carrying on. And anyway, it went on for maybe 10, 15 minutes or so. I'd hear them different parts, and I started getting up and actually going and looking for them. And, I'd be looking behind the couch or looking behind the chair or looking over here. And finally, my parents came into the room, and they were just like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I keep hearing these laughs." And, of course, they brushed it off. They're like, "Oh, whatever." But fast forward, and I got older and actually went, this was only a few years ago, went to Ireland to do some heritage investigating, just kind of seeing where my family's from and that kind of thing. And I kid you not, man, I was sitting in my hotel room in this island, and I heard the same thing. And this time my wife, she was in the bathroom at this point. She was taking a shower or something. And I kept hearing this little giggle, and I was like, what is it going on? And anyway, I told her, of course, she just made fun of me, which is fine. It's one of those things. But yeah, man, I've heard the giggles. I've heard the little people giggles too. And when I was young and when I'm older. And I believe it, man. I'm one that whatever they are, they're around, and they're part of our natural atmosphere, I guess. So anyway, I just wanted to share that and confirm the stories from the two people that you played. So keep it up, bud. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, James. Now, folks, I have a lot more to share with you right after these next messages. Don't touch that dial.
But it's the word or just the act. People get...
What nation do we live in?
Gamers, listen up. This one's for you. You know I'm a huge fan of 80s horror. Well, this new PC game I'm about to tell you about, called Ire, a prologue, aims to be a love letter to 80s and 90s horror. It's set in 1986, aboard an abandoned ship lost deep within the Bermuda Triangle. You play as Emily, a young teenage girl searching for her missing father. Emily is trapped in a terrifying time loop on the ship and must survive 13 loops to reveal the truth of what happened to her father and the crew. The game is a first-person narrative psychological horror with a heavy emphasis on stealth and puzzle solving. There's no combat in the game. Your survival hinges entirely on stealth and evasion. There is a monster, however, a relentless beast that stalks you, engaging in a deadly game of hide and seek. The smarter you get in the game, the smarter the monster gets as well. In Ire, players must find and use everyday items like walkie-talkies and wind-up alarm clocks to distract and outwit the monster. You need to utilize your environment by slipping into hiding spots and squeezing into vents. I think you'll appreciate the immersive atmosphere and visuals, as well as the full 3D audio that places you in a haunted soundscape that really brings the pressure. The game really gives you that nostalgic 80s and 90s horror vibe. Ire, a prologue, is available now for PC via Steam and the Epic Game Store. And as the title suggests, this game serves as a prologue for the larger Ire horror franchise. So this is only the beginning. Again, that's Ire, a prologue, out now for PC via Steam and the Epic Game Store. I also put a link up in tonight's show notes.
$22 million in sun bubbles.
I really didn't expect to see that.
Now for this next best of entry, we work our way a bit north. Please welcome Andy from Nebraska in Season 10, Episode 4.
Hey Derek, my name's Andy. I'm a huge fan of the show. I think I've listened to every episode multiple times. And the story that I have for you involves a little creature sighting, and I think this took place in 2012 or 2013. At the time, I had just moved into my grandma's house after she passed away. I was fortunate to purchase her house, and I lived there, and it was in the Benson area of Omaha, Nebraska, which is kind of an older neighborhood. And there was always this house in that neighborhood, and growing up, it just kind of gave everybody the willies. So it was kind of a brick wall, almost like a medieval-looking fence in front of it with kind of, wrought iron railings. And the weird thing about the house is that no one ever seemed to live there. There'd be like construction that would start, and then that would go on for a few months, and then nobody would ever move in, and then construction would stop, and it just went on like that for decades. And after my grandma passed away, I moved into her house, which was actually just a couple blocks from this creepy looking house. And so pretty much every day to and from work, I had to drive by it. And it was weird. There was just like random stuff in the yard. There was just like old, yard decorations. There was old like garden gnome statues and bird baths, and it was just in disrepair. So at the time, my girlfriend lived with me, and she was driving to work early in the morning one day. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was in January, I believe. And so it's still dark, but she's driving down that street past the creepy house, and she swears that she saw a little creature on 2 feet run very quickly across the street through the creepy gate and into the yard of that house. And she said it was about 1 foot tall. She's positive it wasn't a cat or a dog or a raccoon. She said its arms were kind of swinging by its side like a person would run, and it was jet black in color. And her story's never changed. She's not one to make things up, and kind of creeped her out, honestly. So, every time I have her retell the story, her facts never change, and she doesn't embellish. But yeah, she said it looked like maybe a garden gnome or a leprechaun is the only thing that she could compare it to. And I do some paranormal lectures and presentations around town, and so I thought, okay, well, cool. I'm gonna share this with the public, and maybe people will think it's interesting. So some time goes by, and I was given a presentation at a paranormal event, and I shared the story, figuring people would find it entertaining. A guy in the very back room of the auditorium raises his hand, and we hand him a microphone, and he stands up and he says, "I believe you." And I say, "Okay." And he goes, "Yeah, I believe you, because I saw the same dang thing back in the 1970s about one block over from where you saw it." The whole audience gasps, and turns out this gentleman's name was Carl, and he said that back, I think he said in the 70s, right in that same neighborhood, him and some buddies were in the basement of a house, and they were, shooting some pool and just kind of hanging out. And Carl glanced up, and there was a small window near the ceiling of the basement, kind of like a little access window or whatever you call it. And the curtains were open. And he said he glanced up there, and there was this little, he again called it kind of like a garden gnome or a leprechaun-looking character that was looking down at them from the outside through the window. And so him and his buddies freak out, and they all saw it. So they run upstairs and they run outside trying to track this thing down, and they caught a glimpse of it just as it slid, almost like baseball style, like you'd slide into home plate. But he said this thing slid underneath of a parked car just across the street. And so it was kind of dark and shadowy, but he said it was definitely a little tiny person about 1 foot tall running on 2 legs. And they get down and look underneath the car, and it wasn't there. It had either gotten away or disappeared. So that's what happened. 2 sightings in the same general vicinity. It's interesting. Finally, after all these years, just in the last year or two, somebody finally bought that house and fixed it up and moved in, so it actually looks quite nice on the outside. And still, there's some little creature running around that neighborhood. Every time I drive by it nowadays, I kind of look at it and I just shake my head, and I'm thinking, man, whoever lives there has no idea, or maybe they do. I don't know if they've had their own sighting, but anyway, garden gnomes, leprechauns, whatever you choose to call it, I think there's things out there that exist that we just can't make sense of. Anyway, a huge fan of the show. As a fellow podcast enthusiast, I appreciate all the time and hard work that goes into it. You make it seem really easy, and I know it's a labor of love, and that's a lot of hours behind the computer. So for all of us, please keep it up, because you do a really great job, and have a good one. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Now, this next one, too, might be a fresh story to many of you. But if you'd like to hear stories like this one without the wait, you can always join us in the Beyond. Just go to monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the Patreon tab. $5 a month gives you days worth of additional content. $1 a month gives you all the main show content, completely ad-free. Now, as I said, this next one comes to us from Monsters Among Us Beyond, number 54. Please welcome Anonymous from Parts Unknown.
Hi, Derek. Figured I'd call in and relay some stories that aren't mine, but are actually my brother's. Over the years, he's told me quite a few of these experiences he's had, but he's not willing to call them in. He's not as fascinated with the paranormal as I am, and I think he prefers to sort of ignore it rather than, seek out an interest in it. So, this first story, he and I actually experienced together. I brought it up to him over a cup of coffee in the middle of the night once. We were talking about weird stuff that's happened, and I asked him if he remembered this, and all the blood drained out of his face, and he said, "I'd totally forgotten about that until you brought it up, and I kind of just thought I dreamed it." So we're kids. He and I are 18 months apart. And during this time, we were living in Houston, Texas, only for a short period of time. My dad had just taken a job there. And we were living in this house that was far too big for our small family of 5. And this was during some of our first months in the house. As is characteristic of Houston, Texas, a colossal monsoon rainstorm rolled in. And it rained for 3 or 4 days straight. More rain than I'd ever seen in my life growing up in North Texas, where we're in a perpetual drought most of the time. Along about the second or third day, there was a colossal electrical storm going on, and it ended up knocking out the power. Being kids, we were, woo, spooky, and we were playing around, in the dark, and we just thought, whatever, we'll just make up some stories and play in the dark, and we were just kind of trying to scare each other. And I remember we were upstairs, and we looked down the hall. This was in the afternoon, so the sun was setting, and it was already quite dark because of the storm. And we see this flash of lightning. And in the flash of lightning, I swear to you, this tiny little creature, shaped like a person, ran across the upstairs loft and into the hall. And I remember just looking at him, and our eyes were both like saucers, the blood drained out of our face. What was that? We were freaking out. And, we didn't tell our parents anything about it. We just kind of thought, whatever, we must have just seen something or, yada, yada. So, weeks later, our mom is doing laundry downstairs. And this is going to sound crazy, but she found a set of tiny clothes, a little red shirt and green pants. These were bigger than Barbie clothes, but smaller than something, say, for like an American Girl or a Cabbage Patch Kid. Like, just a tiny set of clothes. I didn't have any dolls. I was a tomboy growing up. I didn't have dolls. So, it was getting to be Christmas time, so we thought, maybe our mom's playing a practical joke on us about elves or, fairies or, look out, the elves are in the house and they're watching you. And we asked her, and she thought we were playing a joke on her. And so, to this day, my mother's never copped to this. If she did play a joke on us, this is something that scared the crap out of us and continues to this day, and I don't have an explanation for it. I will say, though, that throughout the duration of my life, my mom has had a fear of tiny doors, like to service like electrical panels in old houses or the plumbing. Sometimes you'll see a little bitty door, especially in like houses that are about 100 years old. Tiny doors of that nature scare the crap out of my mom. And we'd always tease her if we would go to a museum or a historical home or something, and we'd see one of those small doors. We always point her, look, Mom, and she would just need to stop. She didn't tolerate it. And finally I asked her once over a glass of wine, Mom, why are you scared of tiny doors? And she told me, it's not the doors so much as what I'm afraid might come out of them. Anyways, thanks for the show. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for giving us an outlet to express these things. Anyways, thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you, caller. Well, I actually have yet another anonymous caller. This time from the state of New Mexico. From season 15, episode 14. Please welcome Anonymous to the program.
Hi there. I've just started listening to the podcast. I'm a Astonishing Legends listener, and the name of the podcast popped up, so I thought I'd give it a try. And when I went to look at your episodes, I saw Cherokee Little People, and I said, oh my God. One of my first experiences with the paranormal was growing up here in the Midwest as a little girl. Grew up in a big, old, turn-of-the-century house, and about 4 or 5 years old, I remember being in bed in my room, and my experience was with a different type of little character than was described on the most recent installment of the podcast. What I witnessed being in my bed one morning was a little character, a little bit bigger than the one that had been described in the previous episode. What I saw was a little figure about the size, I'd say, of a toddler, maybe like baby size, but a little chunkier, and could walk and looked like your stereotypical, almost cultural appropriation type Native American. Loincloth, bow and arrow. I was in my bed and saw this little creature run from under my bed across the room and out the door, and it was shooting arrows. I know it sounds insane. I ran to my parents' room and I was really upset. Of course, they brushed it off and told me that it was just a dream. I assured them it was not a dream. flash forward many, many years. I was visiting a new friend, an older woman up in the mountains of Colorado, and she had Cherokee descendants, and my great-grandmother was full Cherokee, and she had this coffee table book about the Cherokee people. And she's like, oh, you'll find this really interesting. So I open it up and I start flipping through it. And I mean, when I came to the section about the Cherokee little people, I'd never heard of them before. The pictures that were in the book, the description that was in the book was just, I immediately was like, this is what I saw. And it really resonated with me that what I saw was real, and it really resonated with me that before I knew better, before I knew about other dimensions and other beings and what we're capable of seeing if we don't have our blinders on, that it is true, and that I wasn't just an imaginative little girl, that I knew what I saw back then and I know what I saw now. And the realness of it really solidified with me. And since then I've come across, just here and there, pictures that kind of like solidify what I saw. Again, it wasn't the action figure size. It was a little person about toddler size. And with a little bow and arrow set, it was kooky, my first paranormal experience, and I'll never forget it. Thank you so much. I'm going to call back because I have another story. Bye-bye.
Thank you, caller. I have several more stories to share with you here this evening, so don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Think of a crime that's making headlines right now. Do you think people will still be talking about it in 20 years? What about 120? A lot of cases that once dominated the news fade from memory. Even the ones that changed laws, shifted public opinion, or were called crime of the century at the time. Those are exactly the kinds of stories journalist Amber Hunt dives into on her podcast, Crimes of the Centuries. Some of the cases might ring a bell, like the Lindenberg baby kidnapping, but you probably don't know all the details. Others you've likely never heard of at all, like the case that helped end the death penalty in Great Britain, or the first wrongful conviction in the U.S. ever overturned by DNA evidence. Amber's not just a journalist, she's a Pulitzer Prize winner who focuses less on the sensational stuff and more on the people involved, how the investigations unfolded, and why these cases still matter today. Follow Crimes of the Century wherever you get your podcasts, and check out centuriespod.com for more info. I've also put a link up in tonight's show notes.
Can you send them to us?
Now next up, we venture to Utah. From Season 11, Episode 9, please welcome Dave to this Best Of episode.
Hello, my name is Dave, and I'm from Utah. So just to begin, I just kind of wanted to explain that I went on a Mormon mission to this Southern American country of Colombia. And the way that Mormon missions work is you kind of sign up and then you are assigned what's called a companion. So you always go out in pairs. And missionaries, since they are out there doing spiritual work, they love to get together and talk about stories. And so last podcast I heard people were talking about Duendes. And that was the first time I heard about it. There was this one Bolivian missionary talking one of those nights that we all got together, saying that his sister was put in a trance and almost walked off a cliff, and he seemed kind of scared of the idea of a duende. And that was the first time that I had heard of it. I didn't know what to think of it, but I still talked to quite a few of those people from that time, and there was this one guy that I knew from another country. But he told me this story a couple months ago, and it has just fascinated me. He said that when he was a kid, he was sleeping one night when this creature dropped from this shelf, from this bookshelf that was next to his bed, and he said that it didn't make any noise, and it was a couple feet tall. He said it had these overalls on that were very dirty, and it had the face of an old man, but the stature of a child, and it introduced itself. It said that it was a duende, and it did have a name, but my friend doesn't remember because he was a young kid. And the duende told him that only the pure people can see it, and that it wouldn't appear to the rest of the family, but it appeared to him, and they would hang out together in the backyard. And my friend just got to know it pretty well, and apparently this duende said that it wouldn't harm people, but it was kind of mischievous. It would kind of pull tricks on the family, move things around, but other than that, it was relatively harmless. This duende did also say that under the ground there was a whole society of these duende, and that they had oceans. And this duende invited my friend multiple times to go down, but my friend never wanted to. He just kind of avoided it. He would still hang out with this thing all the time. And there was this one time that this duende gave him something to eat. And he said, "Eat this, you'll like it." And that night, he remembers that it was almost like he shrunk in his bed, and that he was swimming in his sheets. And he didn't like it, and he was there for a while. And when he woke up, he was regular sized. And he didn't know what happened. He told the duende that he didn't like it, but the duende didn't really seem to care. He said he didn't want to do it again. But over time, the duende invited him to do it again, and the same thing happened. He went to bed, he felt like he was shrinking, he was swimming in his sheets. So he told the duende that he didn't really want to hang out with it. And so they stopped hanging out so much. But when my friend turned 10, he said that he was hanging out with a couple of friends, and they were in the mountains, and they saw this cave with this entrance. And he knew that it was connected to the duende. He just felt it really strongly. So they had materials for a makeshift torch, and they lit it, and they went in, and there was a point where the torch just went out. And so they turned back, and my friend says that over time he kept seeing this cave every once in a while again. And he would even see the duende every once in a while. If he thought about the duende more or talked about the duende more, then the duende would appear and he would see it. And so he kind of saw it less over time, the cave and the duende. And then when he was on his mission, which is about 21 age, he said that there was this one time where his companion saw the duende in the house, and it terrified his companion. And I've heard of this companion. He seemed to have weird spiritual experiences all the time. So it doesn't surprise me that he could see the duende if only the pure can see it. And so they didn't even sleep there that night. His companion wanted to sleep somewhere else. And so my friend just kind of was used to this. He says he's not very scared of the duende. So fast forward a few, he's back from his mission, and he's about to get married, and he went out for a bachelor party, and they were out in the mountains. And there was a point where he saw the cave again. This time he decided to go in again, and since they were hiking, they had flashlights, so they were a bit better prepared. And they went inside, and at the same point in the cave before, where the torch went out, the flashlights went out. And so they had to turn around again, and he just couldn't stop thinking about this cave. He got married, he had a kid, and he kept thinking about it. So he wrote a note for his wife saying that he was going to go into this cave. He didn't say exactly why, but he said that he was going to go in it, and he didn't know what would happen to him. And before he could go, his wife actually found it, and she got very upset with him. She said, "What are you doing? You have a family." And so he decided not to go. But my friend told me that he lives in the US now, and he says that someday he thinks that he'll find it, and he's going to go in. And he says that at that point, he thinks that that could be the last time that anyone sees him. He also told me that he doesn't tell too many people because they tend to look at him like he's crazy. So he just kind of keeps it to himself. But he has told a couple of family members, and one of the sisters that he told was watching his daughter one day. And she did tell him that his daughter was also talking about seeing something very similar, and that she also had an imaginary friend that looked just like the duende. And so my friend is also worried about that. Yeah, I just wanted to leave that story because we talk a lot about what's around us and what's above us, but I don't hear too many stories of things underneath us. So, thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you, Dave, for the call. The Duende. You know, I actually have a couple of Duende stories to share with you. Like Caleb's story here. He's calling in from Texas.
Hey, my name is Caleb, and I'm a really big fan of your show, your podcast. I just found out about it I listening to the latest one I heard about the Duende, and I have a story that concerns my dad. We're from Houston, Texas, and we used to live in Mexico. My dad used to live in the state of Guerrero, which is really close to the coast. So a little backstory before I actually tell you the story. Back when my dad was a kid, he used to play a lot of basketball. And one day he was going out to a game, and he says he saw something small running around a field, and he saw nothing of it. The reason being because back when the Spaniards colonized Mexico, they took over Mexico City, they killed a lot of Aztecs, they killed a lot of native people, and many of them ran away to the Sierras, to the mountain ranges where they couldn't get caught. So my dad, as a little kid, says he would go find stuff from pre-Hispanic Mesoamerican things. For example, clay dolls, whistles that were not, modern made, plastic made, they were clay. And he says he would go into caves, and him and his friends would find carvings of Aztec gods. And you could tell they were Aztec because they were mostly rock. They had the winged serpent, the plumed serpent, which is called. And he'd find all of these things inside caves, along with countless other artifacts. And it was common knowledge that there were artifacts, and they were actually descendants of Aztecs that had hidden there in the mountain ranges in the Sierras. So the story takes place the late 70s, early 80s, and my dad tells it. He was returning from a basketball game, and he says he wasn't tired because he hadn't played. The coach didn't put him on. He was on the bench. So as he's going home, he walks by this field, and he sees something running in the tall grass, and he makes nothing of it, right? He thinks, oh, it's probably a leopard or, a mountain lion or something like that, which is really common in these places. And he pays no heed. He gets home, drinks a big glass of water, and since he didn't play, he lies down on his bed. Eventually, sleep overtakes him, and he falls asleep. The next thing he remembers is his brain telling him, hey, there's something watching you, there's something looking at you. But my dad, being skeptical, he tells his blind, hey, shut up, I'm trying to sleep. And a second time, something in his head tells him, hey, there's something looking at you, wake up, wake up. And finally my dad agrees, and he wakes up, and he looks over to his right. He remembers it so vividly. He explains to me, he looks over to his right, and there's this duende, there's this gnome, whatever you want to call it. It's 2 feet away from his bed. The duende is 2.5 feet tall. He had brown olive skin, right? He had a big beard, a pointy hat, just like you see in the outside garden stuff, like a gnome. He said it was exactly like that, but it had the body of a baby, of a kid, but the face of a grown-ass man. It had a beard, a brown, almost turning white beard, also a mustache, and he was laughing at him. He was looking down on him while my dad was sleeping, and he was laughing at him. And he says the thing that struck out at him the most was that as he's laughing at him, he's looking at him, and he's stroking his belly. He said he had this little pot belly where the shirt didn't cover it up, so he was just laughing at him and rubbing his stomach. And my dad, he closes his eyes and opens it again, and he's still there. And he does this a couple of times, and by the 5th or 6th time that he does this, the duende is gone. And my dad wakes up, he looks around the house was locked, no one was in, he looks around, and he suddenly remembers the thing that he had seen running around the field. And it all comes running back to him how when he was passing by, he just glanced at it. But now that that's happened, he starts remembering, oh, it was too small to be like a jaguar or a puma or something. He remembers all these details, exactly the color of the shirt, which was a really brown shirt, gray pants. He had no shoes on, no socks. And basically, my dad starts praying. He wasn't a religious man, and he's skeptical. But that encounter shook my dad up so much that he's literally talked about it twice. He's talked about it to his family once, and he told me about it when I told him I was listening to your podcast. He's like, let me tell you a story, and I'm only going to say it once. And I told him, give me all the details you can. So he tells me all of these details, and to this day, he does not talk about that with anyone else. He's a religious man now, but he believes it was a demon, disguised as that to turn him away from God. So that's my story, man. I hope you can use it. And thanks for keeping awareness of this stuff, man. And great show. Keep up the good work. I have more stories. I'll call some other time and let you guys know. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Caleb, for the call. Now, Caleb's story originally aired on Season 16, Episode 12, if you'd like to check it out. But as you just heard, Caleb, too, described the Duende, a staple in Mexican folklore. But it's not just our neighbors to the south that seem to experience these pint-sized terrors. No, our neighbors to the north do as well. Please welcome Anonymous from Canada.
Hi, Derek. I'll remain anonymous for this one, but I'm from a city called Winnipeg, Manitoba. For your American listeners, it's in the province of Manitoba, which is north of North Dakota and Minnesota. So the Métis are an ethnic group in Canada, as well as the States, who are the descendants of mostly French fur traders and Dene or Cree women who intermarried over the years during the fur trade and established their own culture and their own ethnic group on the Canadian prairies especially. So my story pertains to a Métis legend called Mama Huasasa. I don't speak Michif or Cree, so I may not be pronouncing that right. And I've actually seen them in a place called CFB Shiloh, which is in my province. It's a military base, and I saw them when I was in the Army. We were doing a defensive training exercise, and the area for where Shiloh is, it's full of what's called the Assiniboine Sandhills, which is this gigantic ancient delta which left massive sandhills all over the place and big tall hills in the middle of the prairie. And it's this beautiful, kind of mystical looking place. And so where we're doing these defensives, it's on this kind of big hill in the shape of a horseshoe. And it was maybe 12:15 midnight, somewhere in that area. And so it was pitch black. And I was looking through my night vision goggles, and they keep telling me that they see movement, they see movement, they see movement. And I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. And it's going to sound weird, but you can see movement in the trees. And almost like dwarves, like picture Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, running around and scurrying around. I thought maybe it was group hallucination or something like that at first. Then I talked to our warrant officer, who is of Métis descent, and he was telling me about these little creatures. I don't know, maybe we were hallucinating, maybe it was fake, but a lot of guys report seeing stuff like that. A lot of people chalk it up to they're sleep deprived or something like that, hallucinating a little bit, because we do sleep deprivation training there as well. You'll notice things are moved, or you'll notice things placed in weird spots, or stuff will go missing and things like that. Just little things that you would just chalk up to a bunch of sleepy 21-year-old soldiers misplacing things. But it gets to the point where it gets almost a little uncanny. Who knows? It's a strange world out there. Take it easy, and bye-bye.
Now, I'll be honest. I don't know that this call has ever been used before. It was submitted a long time ago, and it might have slipped through the cracks at one point or another. So thank you, caller, for the bonus entry.
Really the reason why we won that game. Yeah. Thank you, man. Y'all have a good one. I believe he's a sheet metal guy.
Here we are, folks, down the home stretch of this Best of Little People episode. But don't fret, I have several left in my basket for you. Like this entry from Michael from Season 12, Episode 2.
Hello, this is Michael again from McAllen, Texas. This story is about little people and my encounter with one. So it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I had been working at a shoe store, the Payless shoe store near my house. And at the time, I didn't have a vehicle. Gosh, the year's about probably 1999 or something. And my friend, there was a long day at work, and he took me home. And we were sitting there talking, and he's looking towards me, and I'm looking towards him. And I had already noticed a little kitten in the driveway, and it was maybe about, I don't know, like 3 feet from the passenger door. And he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, oh, it's a cat. It's a kitten. He's like, yeah, but what is it playing with? So I turned over, looked through the window, and sure enough, the kitten is sitting on his haunches, and he's doing that in the hand thing, like he's playing with the arm or something. And I see something under his paw. I mean, this is a kitten, so it's small. And I'm like, roll down the window. So I rolled down the window, and then whatever this thing was, the little person, and I'm talking about like action figure size, turns around and looks at us both. Like he turns to look over its shoulder, and then casually starts walking away. And the cat just, I don't even remember at that point. I know the cat was in the picture somewhere, but I was just focusing on this thing walking away. And it walks towards the hurricane fence with the holes, and he puts one leg inside the hole and then kind of like puts his hands on top of him and kind of shimmies his body through and keeps walking. And my friends just kind of like, that, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't know. So I get out of the car, and he like basically tells me to get off the car. So I get off the car, and I had remembered a story that my grandmother had told me. So I'm like, oh, I need to catch this thing. But at that point, it had already like gone into the neighbor's yard, and I could hear it scurrying away in the leaves. So I told my grandmother about it the next morning. She's like, oh yeah, remember I told you your aunt caught one once? And I'm like, yeah, I remember. She's like, yeah, your aunt caught one once, and she kept it in a jar. And then one day it just disappeared. Like she came to feed it or look at it or something. It just wasn't there anymore. And that's just kind of weird. So then years later, I'm telling this story to one of my cousins, and she's like, well, yeah, I remember a couple times when you were little. She's maybe like 3 years older than me. So she says that I was like maybe 5 or something, and she was like 7 or 8. And she had come over to play with my new toys, and that I was upset. She's like, yeah, I remember it clearly because you were so upset, and I wanted to play with your toys, but you wouldn't let me because the little people had taken one of them. Yeah, so that's my little person story. And like that, we're talking about something about, like maybe 5 inches tall. So that's my story, guys.
Thank you, Michael. And from season 14, episode 16, please welcome Marcos with another Duende tale.
Hi, my name is Marcos, and this is a story of a sighting of little people that my younger brother had in Mexico. It was around the mid to late 2000s. He was walking back from school. He had to go to school a long way from home. It was an evening, like around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. He had to stay late for after-school activities. And once he got out of school, he decided to take the long way home. He had to go through a forested area. Once in the forested area, he decided to just listen to nature while walking and enjoying the moment. But once he heard that the bird singing wasn't the same, it changed. It sounded like it was a person, or it sounded fake. He looked around. He thought he was going to get robbed because he was in Mexico. He thought he was going to be attacked by highwaymen, basically. Once he heard that, he decided to run. He ran as far and as fast as he could. Once he couldn't run anymore, he decided to start walking again. And like a minute had passed, and he had passed by some trees. He heard again that weird whistling, which sounded fake. He looked up at the tree as he was going by it and saw a little person, or a duende as they call it in Mexico. He described it basically as Dobby from the Harry Potter series, and it was the size of a cereal box, so it was small, and it was wearing a loincloth. And once their eyes met, the duende basically dove into the tree branch and just disappeared. Once he saw that, he once again started running. And again, he ran out of breath, stopped running, and continued walking. He kept watching behind him and saw that he was being followed by that duende. He could tell that it wasn't concealing completely his presence. It was just occasionally jumping from bush to bush or branches in the tree line. And he just was behind him, not super close, but still behind him. My brother was, of course, scared and just continued walking, because he couldn't do anything else. So he eventually reached a stream. He decided to jump across the stream. It wasn't a river or anything. It was a stream because it was forested with rural area eventually where he reached. The little person or duende did not jump the stream. He stayed on the other side of that waterway, but he would still be able to perfectly conceal himself within seemingly impossible bunches of grass or bushes, which my brother could tell were much smaller than the duende. He did not question it. He just kept walking and never went back to that place again. He would take the other ways around to go home or the bus even. But that was my younger brother's experience in Mexico with duendes. Thank you for your time. Have a good one.
The duende certainly seems to be a popular character. Thank you again, Marcos, for the call. Now for tonight's final entry. And this one comes to us from the state of Oregon. Please welcome Anonymous from Season 15, Episode 6.
I'm calling from the state of Portland, Oregon. Something weird happened this morning. It's been happening for a few days, but now I know. Yeah, I just called you guys, and as soon as I started saying the word helicopter, my phone got disconnected. It's weird. 3:30 in the morning in Portland, Oregon. I don't know how long it is before they shut off my call again. But I had a dream, and I haven't had a dream for days. I've been having very good sleep. I thought about that, I haven't had any out-of-pocket dreams lately. I wake up at 3:30 in the morning, the feeling of being scared after I woke up, being watched, and that somebody was also inside of my place. I don't really feel like that normally, and I'm bold. I walk around. I don't really care much, I'm not afraid, but it felt otherworldly afraid, to where I didn't want to look out the window or anything like that. Part of my dream was about very small, micro people, the size of like a Keurig coffee little pot that you would put in. The only reason I could say that is because in the dream they were living inside of those. Weird part about it is in my closet I have some of those, Keurigs, but I'll hear little ticks come from the closet every now and then. I've had to sage it out once in a while, but I hear little things. Like right now I just felt a jerk. It feels as if something's jumping off of my bed. I live by myself. I don't have any rats or rodents or anything like that. But it feels kind of like, when somebody gets up or moves off the bed and walks away. But this dream about these little people living in the walls, I remember that they was saying that they're living underneath the pillows and just tucked in small nooks and spots, real small people. So I hear this tick outside my window, kind of like something dropped. So now I grab my sidearm and I stick my head out the window, and immediately there's nothing right there. But behind me, parked in the back, there's a white truck with these weird, like, government-looking plates, and he's got these big old, like, extra lights and high beam, like, kind of lights and stuff. And I've been hearing last night was a higher frequency was going off in my area. I was wondering where it was coming from, but so I step out, and flash my light in the ride, and his head was the size of a damn orange with some glasses on it, regular glasses. So I flicked off the light real quick. I mean, he was hiding, like, tucked up underneath the steering wheel, like he was letting that cover his whole head. Ain't no damn human got the head the size of an orange with some glasses on it, I go back inside, and I go back out a little while later, and I start up one of my vehicles to warm it up. Just I had that feeling like I got to get up and go just in case something's going to happen here, and as I'm warming it up, literally at 4:20 on the dot, he takes off. I mean, from 3:30, staking out my spot all damn night, I mean, there's nothing around here to be in my driveway at 3:30 in the morning, and I'm having dreams of little men and feeling like I'm being watched and feeling like I've been infiltrated. So yeah, that's what's going on with me. It's about 6:10 now in a.m. I haven't slept since. I'm staying up till it's time to start the day. So yeah, thanks. Appreciate your show, man.
Thank you again, caller, for ringing in. And folks, that's going to do it for this Best of Little People episode. A big thanks for swinging by here tonight. Now, real quick, if you don't mind. Monsters Among Us podcast is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes, Delaney Bowers, and Connor Ryan. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Give us a like and follow on our social media accounts. Join us on YouTube, on Discord, and leave us a rate and review wherever that sort of thing is possible. Don't forget that you can catch the show each and every Saturday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern on the UNX Digital Network. Just visit unxnetwork.com to tune in. And tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Co.ag Music, and Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Now I'll be back here on Tuesday with a brand new episode, full of brand new content. So don't forget to tune in. And for you Monster Squad members, I have something special lined up for you here tonight as well. Beginning with this entry from Ari in the state of California.
Hi, this is Ari. I'm from California. This story goes back about maybe early 2000s when I was around 10. I am currently 23 years old, so it gives you an idea. Anywho, we lived in this house that always seemed to have, sounds going on. Often we would hear cabinets opening, closing. Especially we had this attic, and we had a doorbell in the attic. And often around a certain time at night, I would like to say around midnight, my sister and I shared a room, we would hear this bell go off, and we would just lie there in fear. And we told my mom about it, so she went ahead and was like, okay, it's probably the rats up there, an animal up there, she took the batteries out.